So this review is going to cover operations with fractions. Now we've already looked at what a fraction is. We're now going to perform some operations on them. Now let's recall first what a fraction is. Remember, a fraction is a part of a whole. And the top of a fraction is called the numerator and the bottom is the denominator. That's going to become very important when we start looking at adding and subtracting fractions. Now, remember, in order to add or subtract fractions, you must have a common denominator. If it's not common, meaning the same, we can't add or subtract the fractions. Once they are common, then we can perform the operation as necessary. Now we're going to look at this with an example solving 5 over 6 plus 2 over 4. Now the first thing you always want to do when you're dealing with fractions is see if you can reduce them. See if you can simplify them. So is there a number that divides evenly into both 5 and 6? Well, 1, but that doesn't help us. So we just leave it as 5 over 6. Plus is our operation. And now, is there a number that divides evenly into both 4 and 2? Of course there is. They're even, so they can both divide evenly by 2. If we divide the numerator by 2, we are going to get 1. If we divide the denominator by 2, we are going to get 2. So there they are, simplified or reduced. Now, what we need to do is we need to make the denominators the same. So we need to identify the lowest common denominator. And the lowest common denominator is always the value that both numbers will divide evenly into. Now, in this case, the lowest common denominator is 6. 6 and 2 both divide evenly into 6. So what do we have to do to make that denominator the same? Well, remember, as long as we do the same to the top as we do to the bottom, we can get any fraction to change the way we want it. So we need the bottom of this to be 6. It already is 6. We need the denominator over here to be 6, so we need to multiply by 3. Now we can't just multiply the top by 3 without the bottom, and the bottom without the top. We got to do the same to both. And that's going to leave us with 5 over 6. We haven't done anything to that. Plus, if we multiply the numerator here, 1 plus 3, or 1 times 3 is 3. Multiply the denominator, 2 times 3 is 6. And now we have the denominators the same. When the denominators are the same, they have a common denominator. So I can write this as a single fraction. 5 plus 3, let me change that. There's a little mistake there. Let me make it a little neater. So the tops are the same, so we can write the tops the same. We can write it as 5 plus 3 in the top, and the denominator is 6. And now we just add the tops together, perform the operation. 5 plus 3 is 8. Denominator stays the same. And the last thing we always want to do is see if we can reduce the fraction. And again, we can reduce this fraction because they're both even. So 8 over 6, when we reduce it, becomes, divide both by 2, 4 over 3. Now in grade 9 you dealt with a lot of mixed fractions. We're going to often leave things as improper fractions. So 4 over 3, but there's nothing wrong with writing this as a mixed fraction, which would be 1 and 1/3. So that's adding fractions, subtracting the same thing. What about multiplying fractions? Now, multiplying fractions, this is the easiest by far. All we have to do is multiply the tops together and the bottoms together. Numerator by numerator, denominator by denominator, and reduce if we can. So 5 over 3 times 1 over 3. If we multiply the tops together, we're just going to get 3. You multiply the denominators together, you're going to get 15. So 3/5 times 1/3 is 3/15. And how can we reduce this? Well, we can divide both of these by 3. And if we divide top and bottom both by 3, we're going to get 1 over 5. There it is. Easy to do, multiplying fractions. What about division? Division's a little more complicated, but not a lot. Remember, dividing fractions, what we have to do is we must take the reciprocal of the second fraction. And remember what this reciprocal is you just flip the fraction over. You just reverse it. Numerator becomes denominator, denominator becomes numerator. Once we've taken the reciprocal, then we just change to multiply and do as we did before. So let's look at this fraction. We're taking negative 3 over 2, and we're going to divide by 1/4. The first thing we do is we take the second fraction, which in this case leaves the first one unchanged, negative 3 over 2. We flip it over. It was 1/4. Now it becomes 4 over 1, and I apologize for the messy writing. My pen's acting up here. And we just multiply. Now, what does this equal? Well, this just equals negative 12 on the top by top, bottom by bottom, over 2. And remember, a fraction is just like a division sign. So negative 12 divided by 2 is just negative 6. That's all there is to it. Dividing fractions is fairly straightforward as well. Well, what if we have improper fractions? Improper fractions just require one additional step right from the start. If we have an improper fraction, what we want to do is we want to if we have a mixed fraction, what we want to do is we want to convert them to an improper fraction. That is what we are doing. Now, we did that already, and let's just quickly refresh. To change a mixed fraction to an improper fraction, you take the whole number multiplied by the denominator and add the numerator to it. So this mixed fraction, if we go 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1, we're going to get 7 over 2. And our operation is add. That doesn't change. This mixed fraction, 1 2/3, becomes 1 times 3 is 3 plus 2 is 5 over 3. And now we have two fractions. We're trying to add them together, so we need a common denominator. The LCD in this case, or the lowest common denominator. What number does both 2 and 3 divide evenly into? Well, just 6. So we have to multiply this fraction, top and bottom, by 3, and the second fraction, top and bottom by 2. And when it's all said and done, what are we going to get? Well, we are going to get 21 over 6 plus 10 over 6. Denominators are the same. We just add the numerator, perform the operation. 21 plus 10 is 31 all over 6. That's all there is to it. Just change that mixed fraction to improper. Well, what about division? Same thing. We always have to switch this to an improper fraction. Negative 2 1/5. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. Plus 1 is 11. So it becomes negative 11 over 5. And the bottom, again, I'm not going to change the operation yet. I'm going to keep that the same. That's supposed to be division, so let's just make that a little neater. Negative 11 over 5 divided by 1 3/4 is the same as 1 times 4 is 4, plus 3 is 7 over 4. Now remember, to divide, we just flip the second fraction, take the reciprocal. First one doesn't change. Reciprocal of 7/4 is 4 over 7. Change it to multiplication and perform the operation. Negative 44 all over 35. And there is no number that divides evenly into both of those, so we just have a big fraction of negative 44 over 35. That's the theory on operations with fractions. Go ahead and do some of the practice questions on the practice worksheet.